It's not just age. Something you're eating every day could be putting stress on your heart. That unexplained breathlessness, that sudden drop in energy, it might not be normal at all. Because one very common habit after 60 can quietly weaken your heart without any warning signs. Now here's the uncomfortable question. Backhand index pointing right. What if something you're eating daily is slowly putting pressure on your heart right now, without you realizing it? And the scary part is, backhand index pointing right, most people never suspect it, because it feels completely normal. Which is exactly why this matters. Stop eating this after 60, it's secretly weakening your heart. And when you see "stop this," backhand index pointing right, it's not just a warning. It's about something so common that millions of people over 60 are doing it every single day. And the worst part, backhand index pointing right, it doesn't feel unhealthy at all until it's too late. So before this silently starts affecting your heart, backhand index pointing right, you need to know exactly what this is. And here's where things get uncomfortable. Most people think they're protecting their heart just because they've cut back on junk food. But what if the real risk isn't the food you avoid? What if it's the food you trust every single day? The ones that feel normal, safe, even healthy. Especially after 60, when convenience matters more, and you naturally rely on quick, easy meals. But here's the hidden problem. Backhand index pointing right, some of these normal foods are quietly adding stress to your heart over time. No pain, no warning, no sudden signal. Just a slow effect you don't notice at first. Until your energy starts dropping, your blood pressure changes, and your body doesn't feel the same anymore. And that's exactly why most people miss it. Because it doesn't look like a mistake. It looks like a smart habit. But what if that smart habit is actually holding your heart back? And the surprising part is, backhand index pointing right, it could already be sitting in your kitchen, part of your daily routine, without you even thinking about it. Now here's where it gets interesting. I'm not going to name the food just yet, because I want you to think about your own daily habits first. Especially the foods that feel safe. The ones that are common, easy, even considered healthy in many homes. But have you ever noticed something strange? Backhand index pointing right, some foods give quick satisfaction, but shortly after, you feel a drop in energy or a slight heaviness that you just ignore. And most people blame it on age. But that's where the mistake happens. Because this isn't about obvious junk food. It's about something that looks completely harmless. Even natural, even light. But inside your body, it slowly changes how your heart handles pressure and circulation over time. And the worst part, backhand index pointing right, you can eat it every day for years without ever connecting it to your heart health. That's why most people never suspect it, until small warning signs start showing up and they think it's just aging. But in reality, backhand index pointing right, there is a very specific habit behind it that almost everyone overlooks. And in the next part, I'll show you exactly what it is. Now let's start connecting the dots. Because this is usually where the body first starts giving quiet signals. And most people completely ignore them. Why? Because it doesn't feel serious at first. Maybe you get tired faster than before. Or walking upstairs feels a little heavier. Or your breathing isn't painful, just slightly different when you rush or get stressed. And instead of questioning it, most people say the same thing. Backhand index pointing right, it's just a. But here's what's actually happening inside. When certain daily eating habits continue over time, they slowly make your heart work harder, even for simple tasks it used to handle easily. And over time, that extra load can start affecting how smoothly your body manages energy and circulation. Which is why stamina feels lower, without any clear reason. And the important part is this. Backhand index pointing right, your body doesn't warn you loudly at the beginning. It starts with whispers. Fatigue, slight breathlessness, or that feeling that your strength reserve just isn't the same anymore. And this is the stage most people miss completely. because nothing feels dangerous yet. But small changes here decide what happens later. And if you recognize what's driving that strain early, backhand index pointing right, you still have time to stop it from getting worse. But if you ignore it, it keeps building quietly in the background, until one day, it doesn't feel so small anymore. Now here's the part most people completely miss. Because when something is slowly affecting your heart, it doesn't just show up as tiredness. It starts spreading into small parts of your daily life. Maybe your energy doesn't last as long as it used to. Maybe your body takes longer to recover after simple activity. And even your focus doesn't feel as sharp some days. But here's the dangerous part. Backhand index pointing right, most people don't connect these changes to anything serious. So they ignore them and keep going for years, while the real cause keeps building quietly in the background. This is exactly why heart-related issues rarely feel sudden. They grow slowly, through repeated daily habits that feel harmless at the time. Especially after 60, when the body doesn't bounce back as quickly as it used to. And here's the real concern. Backhand index pointing right, the very thing causing this strain, is often something people continue eating every day, thinking it's normal, even healthy. But inside, it keeps making the heart work harder than it should, day after day. Until one day, the body can no longer hide it. And that's when the warning signs finally become impossible to ignore. And now, it's time to finally bring this into the open. Because the harmless daily habit we've been building up to, backhand index pointing right, is something millions of people eat without a second thought. Processed meats, things like sausages, deli slices, hot dogs, bacon. Foods that feel quick, easy, and completely normal. And that's exactly why they're so dangerous. Backhand index pointing right, because they don't feel dangerous at all. In fact, many people rely on them every single day, without ever realizing what they're doing inside the body. Because behind the scenes, backhand index pointing right, these foods quietly push your blood pressure higher. Backhand index pointing right, forcing your heart to work harder, again and again. And here's the part most people don't expect. Backhand index pointing right, you don't have to overeat them. Even small amounts, eaten regularly, can slowly build pressure on your heart over time. Which is why this shocks so many people. Because something that feels normal, even safe in moderation, backhand index pointing right, can quietly become one of the biggest hidden stressors on your heart. If it becomes part of your daily routine, and if this continues as part of your daily routine, this is where the real problem begins. Because in the beginning, your body tries to keep up. Your heart pushes a little harder. Your system adjusts quietly, so you don't feel anything serious right away. But over time, that extra strain starts catching up. Backhand index pointing right, your energy drops more than usual. Backhand index pointing right, simple movements feel heavier. Backhand index pointing right, and your blood pressure can slowly rise without you even noticing. And here's where it becomes real. Backhand index pointing right, it starts affecting your independence. You may not notice it at first, but you begin avoiding certain things. Walking a little less, getting tired a little faster, needing more rest than before. And slowly, your normal daily life doesn't feel as easy anymore. This is how it catches most people off guard. Not as one sudden event, but as a slow shift that feels like just getting older. When in reality, backhand index pointing right, a daily habit, has been working against your heart the whole time. And the hardest part, backhand index pointing right, it feels like such a small thing. Just something you eat regularly. But over time, it quietly pushes your body in the wrong direction. And if nothing changes, that slow decline doesn't stop. Backhand index pointing right, it keeps building, until your body can't keep up the way it used to. Now here's the part that really matters. Because once you're aware of this, backhand index pointing right, you can actually take control back faster than you think. And it doesn't require extreme changes. But it does require one simple shift. Backhand index pointing right, what you choose instead. Instead of relying on processed meats every day, start replacing them, even a few times a week, with foods your heart doesn't have to fight against. Simple things. Backhand index pointing right, freshly cooked chicken. Backhand index pointing right, eggs. Backhand index pointing right, lentils or beans. Backhand index pointing right, or even lightly prepared fish. Nothing complicated. But here's what makes this powerful. Backhand index pointing right, many people notice a difference sooner than they expect. Not months. Sometimes within days. They feel less heavy, more steady in their energy, and slightly more active without pushing themselves. And that's not random. Backhand index pointing, right, it's because your heart is no longer under that constant hidden pressure. It finally gets a chance to work more efficiently. And this is where most people get it wrong. Backhand index pointing, right, it's not about being perfect. It's about being consistent. Even reducing how often you eat these foods can start taking that pressure off your heart, little by little. And over time, those small decisions don't stay small. Backhand index pointing right, they turn into real strength, real energy, and a level of control over your health that most people think they've already lost after 60. And when you really step back and look at it, this was never just about one food. It was about something much bigger. Backhand index pointing right, the small daily choices that quietly decide how strong or how weak your heart becomes over time. Because what feels normal today can either protect your energy or slowly take it away without you even noticing. And that's why Stop This isn't just a warning. Backhand index pointing right, it's a wake-up call. Because your heart doesn't suddenly fail one day. Backhand index pointing right, it responds to what you do, again and again, every single day. And the powerful part is, backhand index pointing right, you still have control over that, starting right now. So here's something I want you to think about. Backhand index pointing right, what's one food in your daily routine that you never questioned before, but now you're not so sure about? Drop it in the comments. Because chances are, backhand index pointing right, someone else is eating the same thing without realizing it. And if this opened your eyes even a little, make sure you stay with me. Because there are a few more harmless habits like this. Backhand index pointing right, that most people completely overlook until it's too late.